Good morning, dear students. We are going to discuss dural folds and also dural venous sinuses today. Dural folds, what we have are nothing but the cranial dura is arranged in two layers. That is the outer endosteal layer and inner meningeal layer. This forms the inner layer. In fact, that is the inner meningeal layer. Okay, then. So we have different types of dural folds, like two are sickle shaped folds and two are tents. So now let us name them. What are these dural folds? We have sickle shaped folds are falx cerebri and falx cerebelli, and tent like folds we have are tentorium cerebelli and diaphragma celli. So these are the four dural folds what we see inside the cranial cavity, which is seen covering the brain and dipping inside the brain in different directions. So these two layers, like the periosteal and the meningeal layers, are firmly attached to each other, except in some places where you will see venous space is enclosed, where venous blood is present, and which is called as dural venous sinus. So between the meningeal layer and the endosteal layer, we have the dural venous sinus. So here in this section of the head region, where the skull bone has been cut in different directions so as to facilitate us to understand the falx cerebri, you can see this fold of dura mater we have is falx cerebri. Okay, so the one which is attached along the interior of the sagittal suture, this is the attached margin of the falx cerebri, and the one which is freely hanging inside the brain is the free margin of the falx cerebri. Basically, falx cerebri is present between the two cerebral hemispheres. Anteriorly, the falx cerebri is attached to the crista galli, what we have seen in anterior cranial fossa. Posteriorly, this is the posterior attachment of falx cerebri, which is attached to the midpoint of this tent-shaped fold, that is the tentorium cerebelli. So this is how falx looks, sickle-shaped fold of dura mater. Basically, when you see from the scalp region, see now this is the skull bone over which we have the scalp with its 5 layers. Below the skull bone, we have the meninges, which are basically 3 layers. The outermost meningeal layer is called as dura mater. Then middle meningeal layer is arachnoid mater. Innermost meningeal layer is pia mater. So the dura mater is further subdivided into 2 layers, that is the periosteal layer and then we have meningeal layer. So periosteal layer has been shown in light sky blue color and meningeal layer has been shown in pink color. So between the periosteal layer and meningeal layer, we have some space which is filled with venous blood. So this space is actually called as dural venous sinus. Okay, the interior of cranial cavity is lined by dura mater. Surface of brain is, now see this is the brain, we can see the surface of brain is covered by pia mater. So that means from outside to inside, the order of meninges is dura mater, arachnoid mater and pia mater. The surface of brain is covered by pia mater. The dura is separated from arachnoid by subdural space. That means below the dura mater, whatever space is there, you call it as subdural space. Below the arachnoid mater, whatever space is there, we have subarachnoid space, which is usually filled with cerebrospinal fluid. So between these two lies the arachnoid mater. That means outside is dura, inside is pia. Between the dura and pia, we have arachnoid matters. So these three meninges together, they are actually called as meningeal layers of the brain. Dura mater, arachnoid mater, pia mater. Now see, these meningeal layers are not only covering the brain, the same meningeal layers also come and cover the spinal cord. Okay, the outermost covering is cerebral dura mater. It has outermost toughest and thickest membrane. The outermost layer is the endosteal layer, which is just below the periosteum, lining the inner surface of the skull bone. Okay, this one. This is the endosteal layer, and the inner meningeal layer. which is actually dura mater proper enclosing the brain, and at the foramen magnum it becomes continuous with the dura mater, which is also covering the spinal cord. Okay, meningeal layer covers the spinal cord as well. Now see here, when you look at this brain, you are finding this is right cerebral hemisphere, left cerebral hemisphere. Neuroanatomy we will be taking separately, nothing to worry. Okay. Now the dural folds, like between the right and left cerebral hemispheres, here comes the sickle-shaped fold of dura mater, which is nothing but falx cerebri. At places, the meningeal layer is folded on itself to form dural folds. So between the two cerebral hemispheres, it is named as falx cerebri. This is cerebellum. This is the posterior view of the brain. So between the two cerebral hemispheres and between the two cerebellar hemispheres, this space you will have tent-shaped fold of dura mater, this area. The tent-shaped fold of dura mater is tentorium cerebelli. Between the two lobes of cerebellar hemispheres also, dipping in this direction, there is a fold of dura mater which is called as falx cerebelli. Falx cerebelli. And there is a fold of dura mater which is found in the middle cranial fossa, which you call as diaphragma celli. Okay, so now you can see this is the sickle-shaped fold of dura mater, which is called falx cerebri. Here in the middle cranial fossa, there will be one one more fold, which is actually called as diaphragma celli. Okay, then we have tentorium cerebelli and falx cerebelli. Now see, this is a picture where we are seeing exclusively falx cerebri along with the dural venous sinuses also. I told you the endosteal layer and meningeal layer is splitting to enclose the dural venous sinus, the venous blood. So this is the sickle-shaped fold of dura mater. So the superior aspect of this falx cerebri is attached to the inside aspect of the sagittal suture. So here it is associated with one dural venous sinus. It has been named as superior sagittal sinus. Superior sagittal sinus. The free margin of falx cerebri is also showing one dural venous sinus. You call it as inferior sagittal sinus. Inferior sagittal sinus. Along the attached margin of the tentorium cerebelli, you will have one more sinus which is called as straight sinus. Straight sinus. Okay. Now, when you talk about falx cerebri, it is large sickle-shaped fold of dura mater, which is seen along the medial longitudinal fissure. So, this is sickle-shaped fold of dura mater, and this is the median longitudinal fissure. So, actually, falx cerebri will be folding, dipping between these two cerebral hemispheres. Okay, anteriorly it is attached to crista galli. Okay, so anteriorly falx cerebri is attached to crista galli, median plane of the upper surface of the tentorium cerebelli. This also I have shown you, isn't it? Anteriorly, this point you call it as crista galli. Posteriorly, this is the cut point of the tentorium cerebelli where it is attached. So margins upper is convex, which is attached to the sagittal sulcus, lower is concave and free. So this one is upper one, which is convex attached to the sagittal suture, sagittal sulcus, and lower one is free. It is related to inferior sagittal sinus. So surface of the falx cerebri is related to medial surface of the cerebral hemisphere, and it is related to superior and inferior sagittal sutures, isn't it? So sinuses, superior sagittal sinus and inferior sagittal sinus. Okay, then next we have tent-shaped fold of like dura mater. You call it as tentorium cerebelli. So tentorium cerebelli. This is a very beautiful picture of falx cerebri where you can see this is the attached margin which is convex. This is the free margin which is down. Anteriorly it is attached to crista galli, posteriorly to the midline of this tent. This tent is tentorium cerebelli. Okay. So now see the tent of one side has been cut so that we are able to see the cerebellum lying below the tent. Above the tent, we will find the occipital lobes of cerebral hemispheres. Below the tent, we will find the cerebellar hemispheres. Okay, and this is the midpoint of the tentorium cerebelli, which is coming and getting attached to the falx cerebri, sickle-shaped fold of dura mater. You can see this is the mid-sagittal section of head and neck where beautifully the falx cerebri, the dura mater has been shown. Okay, so this is the superior sagittal sinus, this is inferior sagittal sinus. So this is all falx cerebri. Now this picture clearly depicts the position of the tent. So this is crista galli area, isn't it? This is anterior cranial fossa, middle cranial fossa, posterior cranial fossa. This tent-shaped fold of dura mater we have is tentorium cerebelli. So the tentorium cerebelli is tent-shaped fold of dura mater. Okay. As you have seen, like tentorium cerebelli is tent-shaped fold of dura mater, which is covering cerebellum from above, and occipital lobes will be seen from behind. I'll show you the picture once again. See, this is the position of tentorium cerebelli. Above the tent, we will find occipital lobes of cerebrum. Below the tentorium cerebelli, we will find the cerebellar hemispheres. So that means this tent-shaped fold of fold of dura mater is separating the occipital lobes from the cerebellar hemispheres. So here, attachment, it is attached to the transverse sulcus. There is the petrous part of the temporal bone. Posteriorly, it is attached to the clinoid process. Let me show you once. Is the tent-shaped fold of dura mater. This area is petrous part of the temporal bone. Okay, so along this margin, you will see the attached margin of the tentorium cerebelli, petrous part of the temporal bone. And this area is posterior clinoidal process. So here it is attached like U shape. So that is the U shape is the free margin which is attached along the posterior clinoidal processes. Attached margin is along the petrous part of the temporal bone. Apart from petrous part of the temporal bone, this area is transverse sulcus. It is attached along the transverse sulcus also where we have the transverse sinus. This particular point is internal occipital protuberance. So these are all attached margins. I repeat, petrous part of the temporal bone, transverse sulcus, internal occipital protuberance, transverse sulcus, and again the petrous part of the temporal bone. So these are the, and this is free margin is attached to the posterior clinoidal process. Above this tent-shaped fold of dura mater, we will have occipital lobes of cerebral hemispheres. If you cut and remove this, you will see the two cerebellar hemispheres. Okay. Now, this complete thing, whatever you see, is the tentorium cerebelli. In the midpoint of the tentorium cerebelli, you will see the falx cerebri is attached. So, this sickle-shaped fold of dura mater is falx cerebri, and this tent-shaped fold of dura mater is tentorium cerebelli. In the middle cranial fossa, where we have pituitary gland, at that point also we have one more tent-shaped fold of dura mater. You call it as diaphragma ocelli. Between the two cerebellar hemispheres, there is a sickle-shaped fold of dura mater. You call it as falx cerebelli. Okay. So like that, we have like 4 different dural folds. Now I hope you clearly understand the attachments, that is the transverse sulcus, petrous part of the temporal bone, and the posterior clinoidal process. These are the attachment areas of the tentorium cerebelli. So margins are U-shaped, anterior free margin, anterior clinoidal process, Beer's tentorial notch. Okay. Superiorly, it is related to occipital lobe of cerebral hemispheres. Inferiorly, it is related to cerebellum. Then we have falx cerebelli, which is also a sickle-shaped fold of dura mater, which is present in the posterior cerebellar notch. So attachment inferior surface of the tentorium cerebelli on median plane. Margins are apex, like it is going up to the foramen magnum, and it is convex attached to the internal occipital crest. Diaphragm ocelli is again a tent-shaped fold of dura mater which you see in the middle cranial fossa where we have pituitary gland. It is small circular roof of the hypophyseal fossa, pituitary fossa, nothing but. So attachment, tuberculum sellae, dorsum sellae, what has been discussed in the cranial fossae class. So we have dura, dura which is attached to the middle cranial fossa. So what do we have here? Pituitary gland, that is hypophysis cerebri. Okay, you can see the picture again. This is falx cerebri. This is tentorium cerebelli. Here you will have the diaphragm ocelli. Lower down on the inferior aspect of tentorium cerebelli, we will have falx cerebelli. Okay, this is tent-shaped fold of dura mater. So this is all attached margin. You can see posterior clinoidal process. Then petrous part of the temporal bone, transverse sulcus, internal occipital protuberance. Then this is the anterior, like free margin we have, right? Which is attached to the anterior clinoidal processes. Okay, and this notch is the tentorial notch. Then you can see the section of head and neck has been taken at various levels. This is between two cerebral hemispheres. The fold of dura mater is falx cerebri. Okay, between the cerebral hemispheres and cerebellar hemispheres, the fold of dura mater is tentorium cerebelli. Between the two cerebellar hemispheres, the fold of dura mater is falx cerebelli. Okay, so this is actually like angiographic picture where you are finding the different dural venous sinuses. Okay, so the blood supply of the dura, before I go to the blood supply, will also tell you, like this was told, I think, when you were discussing the trigeminal ganglion. So there is a cave called as Meckel's cave or the trigeminal cave. It is nothing but the recess of dura mater present in relation to the attached outer margin of the tentorium cerebelli. It is formed by the evagination of meningeal layer of dura mater by two roots of trigeminal nerve below the superior petrosal sinus over the trigeminal impression and the anterior surface of the petrous part of the temporal bone near its apex. So blood supply of dura mater, the vault of the skull area, the dura mater is supplied by middle meningeal artery, anterior cranial fossa and the dura lining that area is supplied by anterior ethmoidal, posterior ethmoidal and ophthalmic arteries. Middle cranial fossa area of the dura is supplied by middle meningeal arteries, accessory meningeal and internal carotid arteries and meningeal branches of ascending pharyngeal artery. Posterior cranial fossa is supplied by meningeal branches of vertebral, occipital and ascending pharyngeal arteries. Now these are the blood vessels. Basically these are all branches coming from the internal carotid artery. Okay, nerve supply of the dura. The dura of the vault is supplied by sensory nerves derived from ophthalmic division of trigeminal. The dura of the floor has rich nerve supply and it is sensitive to pain. Anterior cranial fossa is supplied by the branches coming from maxillary nerve, that is the anterior ethmoidal branch. Middle cranial fossa is also supplied by maxillary nerve in the anterior part and branches of mandibular nerve from the trigeminal ganglion in the posterior part. Posterior cranial fossa, it is supplied by recurrent branches of first, second and third cervical spinal nerves and by meningeal branches of 9th and 10th cranial nerves. So this is the summary picture of all dural venous sinuses you are seeing. This is falx cerebri, this is tentorium cerebelli. Okay, here this region we will see the diaphragm ocelli. Okay, now coming to the clinical anatomy of the dural folds, extradural and subdural hemorrhages are common. So that extradural means the bleeding is outside the dura mater. Subdural is the bleeding is below the dura mater. So extradural hemorrhages are usually arterial. It is due to the injury of the blood supply coming from outside, that is the middle meningeal artery. Subdural, below the dura mater, the bleeding is usually venous subdural hemorrhage. Extradural hemorrhage, symptoms of cerebral compressions are late. Extradural hemorrhage, usually you will see there may be paralysis which is appearing first in the face and then spreads to lower parts of the body. Subdural hemorrhages are usually haphazard. Extradural hemorrhage, no blood in the cerebrospinal fluid, whereas in subdural hemorrhage, usually it is, you will see it like blood tinged CSF, which is a common feature. Okay. Now see, this is, you are finding like this is the dural fold, okay, and this is the subdural hemorrhage we are finding, okay. This is also subdural hemorrhage, okay. Now let us see the dural venous sinuses. The venous spaces between the two layers of dura. What are those? The endosteal layer and meningeal layer. Okay. So obviously, unlike the other blood vessels, it is lined by endothelium and it is devoid of valves. Okay. Then classification. It has been classified like dural venous sinuses have been classified as paired and unpaired. So if you find the dural venous sinuses, this is the cranial cavity, right? This is anterior cranial fossa, middle cranial fossa, posterior cranial fossa. So if you find the dural venous sinuses on right and left side, you call them as paired dural venous sinuses. And if you find only one in the midline, you call them as unpaired dural venous sinuses. So from this picture, let us try to name. You are finding superior parietal sinus. This is found on the right and left side, hence it is paired. Okay. You are finding middle meningeal vein, which is also on both the side, hence paired. Okay. Cavernous sinus is on the both the sides, hence it is also paired. Right cavernous sinus, left cavernous sinus. This is superior petrosal sinus, which is also found on both the sides, hence paired. You are finding sigmoid sinus on both the sides. You are finding transverse sinus on both the sides, hence paired sinus. Occipital sinus looks 1 in number, isn't it? So like that, you are finding like dural venous sinuses, they are paired and unpaired. So paired sinuses are cavernous sinus. We have petrosal, superior and inferior petrosal sinus, 2 transverse sinuses, 2 sigmoid sinuses, and 2 sphenoparietal sinuses. Okay. Unpaired ones we have seen with falx cerebri. We have superior sagittal sinus, inferior sagittal sinus, straight sinus, occipital sinus, and basilar plexus of sinuses. Okay. Here you will have superior sagittal sinus. Here you will have inferior sagittal sinus. Here we will have straight sinus, right? Okay. Then. So dural venous sinuses, of course, this is a lateral view which is showing this is superior sagittal sinus, this is inferior sagittal sinus, this is straight sinus. Okay, this point will be the occipital sinus. Okay, then. So cavernous sinus situated on either side of the body of the sphenoid bone. Okay, so which is the cavernous sinus? The one which has been shown in red color now. This is the cavernous sinus. Okay. The dural venous sinuses, as you know, they are situated between the 2 layers of dura mater, which are lined by endothelium, and their valves are thick, but they do not have any valves. The function of these dural venous sinuses is they receive blood from the brain through cerebral veins and the CSF from the subarachnoid space through the arachnoid villi. Okay, so these are the arachnoid villi. So from the arachnoid villi, this dural venous sinus, this venous blood is also receiving CSF. Okay, so this is the periosteal layer of dura mater. This is the endosteal layer of dura mater. Between the periosteal and endosteal layer, we have a space which is enclosing the venous blood, forming various sinuses, the dural venous sinuses. All blood from different dural venous sinuses, whether they are paired or unpaired, ultimately the venous blood of the brain via dural venous sinuses, it is draining into internal jugular vein in the neck. We have seen internal jugular vein was seen as one of the contents of carotid sheath, isn't it? Emissory veins, which are also valveless, they connect the dural venous sinuses with the diploic veins of the skull and also with the veins of scalp, which we have studied when we were doing scalp lecture. Now, the dural venous sinuses, like as you can see from this picture, let me show you. We have superior sagittal sinus unpaired, inferior sagittal sinus unpaired, straight sinus unpaired, transverse sinus will be on both the side paired, sigmoid sinus is S-shaped, paired one, occipital sinus is also unpaired. We have superior petrosal and inferior petrosal sinus. I have shown you in my previous slides very clearly, and cavernous sinus is also paired. So let us see which are the paired and unpaired ones. The paired ones are cavernous, superior, inferior petrosal, transverse and sigmoid. Unpaired ones are superior and inferior sagittal sinuses, straight sinus and occipital sinus. Okay, different pictures which show us the dural venous sinuses. Now let us start with the superior sagittal sinus. Where is it present? Along the upper margin of falx cerebri. Isn't it? Upper fixed border of falx cerebri. So this superior sagittal sinus, it begins like this and comes like this. Now let us see. Begins anteriorly at the foramen cecum, where that means which we see in the anterior cranial fossa with the cribriform plate of ethmoid bone. There we will see, right? So where it occasionally receives one vein from the nasal cavity, it runs posteriorly, grooving the vault of the skull. It deviates to one or the other side. Usually it deviates on the right side. Okay, at the internal occipital protuberance and becomes continuous with the right transverse sinus most of the times. Then, see, this is the superior sagittal sinus. It is deviating mostly on the right side and it is moving towards the right transverse sinus. Okay, so the meeting point of all dural venous sinuses, you call it as confluence of sinuses. It is formed at the internal occipital protuberance. Sinus usually dilates and becomes continuous with the right transverse sinus. It is connected to the opposite transverse sinus and receives occipital sinus. So numerous arachnoid villi are and granulations project into the lacunae, which also receive the diploic and meningeal veins. Okay, so many veins. You can see if it is superior sagittal sinus, the named ones are superior cerebral vein, lateral lacunar vein, meningeal vein. So many veins will be draining into the superior sagittal sinus. In its course, it receives the superior cerebral veins. Okay, then now coming to the inferior sagittal sinus, which is present along the free margin of the falx cerebri. Isn't it? Free lower margin of falx cerebri, you can see the inferior sagittal sinus. It runs backwards and joins the great cerebral vein of Galen at the free margin of tentorium cerebelli to form the straight sinus. This is the straight sinus and this is the great cerebral vein of Galen. Okay. See, this is the great cerebral vein. Inferior sagittal sinus. Now it is going and meeting the great cerebral vein of Galen. From here, it is becoming continuous with the straight sinus. Runs backwards and joins the great cerebral vein at the free margin of tentorium cerebelli and to form the straight sinus. The inferior sagittal sinus receives few cerebral veins from the medial surface of the cerebral hemisphere. This is the medial surface of the cerebral hemisphere. Okay, then we have this sinus which is called as straight sinus. This is superior sagittal sinus. This is inferior sagittal sinus. This is great cerebral vein of Galen. This is the straight sinus. It is formed by the union of inferior sagittal sinus with the great cerebral vein. Occupies the line of junction of falx cerebri with the tentorium cerebelli. It ends by turning to the left, sometimes to the right to form the transverse sinus. Okay. Transverse sinus, these are paired structures that begin at the internal occipital protuberance. So you will see transverse sinus position. See, this is one transverse sinus, this is one more transverse sinus. So these are paired structures that begin at the internal occipital protuberance. So this is internal occipital protuberance, this is right transverse sinus, left transverse sinus, internal occipital protuberance. The right sinus is usually continuous with the superior sagittal sinus and left is in continuation with the straight sinus. The transverse sinus receives superior petrosal sinus, inferior cerebral vein, cerebellar veins, and the diploic veins. So this is right transverse sinus, left transverse sinus, internal occipital protuberance. So next we have sigmoid sinus. This is one sigmoid sinus and this is one more sigmoid sinus. So sigmoid sinuses are direct continuation of transverse sinuses. Each sinus turns downwards and medially and groups the mastoid part of the temporal bone, passes inferiorly through posterior part of jugular foramen to become continuous with the superior bulb of internal jugular vein. Okay, so this is sigmoid sinus. So now to summarize, this is straight sinus, this is confluence of sinus, right transverse sinus, left transverse sinus. If you remove the dura mater, you will see there is a sigmoid sulcus in posterior cranial fossa where we have sigmoid sinus which comes out through the jugular foramen to move into internal jugular vein. So this will be the internal jugular vein. This completely sigmoid sinus. Okay, it becomes continuous with the superior bulb of internal jugular vein. Now, this is in the occipital, internal occipital protuberance area, we will have occipital sinus. It's a small sinus occupying the attached margin of falx cerebelli. It commences near the foramen magnum, where it communicates with the vertebral veins and drains into the confluence of sinuses. It is like this. Okay, meeting point of all sinuses like superior sagittal sinus. Then we have straight sinus. Okay, and all these sinuses meeting point is the occipital sinus. Okay, then the cavernous sinuses are two in number, right and left cavernous sinuses. Cavernous sinus itself is an essay question. Dural venous sinuses, generally question comes like paired and unpaired. First of all, you should write the definition of dural venous sinus. Then we will be asking you to name the paired and unpaired dural venous sinuses. Usual discussion will be write in detail about cavernous sinus. This is the most probable essay which we usually find in university exam, and question will be framed in clinical pattern. Okay. So this is like cavernous sinus which is situated in the middle cranial fossa on each side of the sphenoid bone. Each sinus extends from this area, that is the superior orbital fissure, to the apex of the petrous part of the temporal bone. So this intervening area is nothing but cavernous sinus. This area is superior orbital fissure. This area is apex of the petrous part of the temporal bone. So between these two areas, we have cavernous sinus. So numerous trabeculae in the sense partitions. So numerous trabeculae cross their interior, giving them a spongy appearance. The two sinuses communicate with each other by means of anterior intercavernous sinus and posterior intercavernous sinus. That means right cavernous sinus and left cavernous sinus, they are in connection with each other via anterior intercavernous sinus and posterior intercavernous sinus. Now coming to the tributaries. So what are the various tributaries which are opening into the cavernous sinus? We have superior and inferior ophthalmic veins coming from the eyeball, then inferior cerebral veins, sphenoparietal sinus and central vein of retina. The sinus drains posteriorly into superior and inferior petrosal sinuses, inferiorly into pterygoid venous plexus. Okay, so this is right and left cavernous sinuses. You can see the venous blood, how it is coming and entering into the cavernous sinus. So the veins are coming from the eyeball. So these are the superior and inferior ophthalmic veins. Okay, so you can see how these ophthalmic veins are draining their blood into the cavernous sinus. We know like the cavernous sinus through pterygoid plexus of veins via emissory veins, like we are seeing it has got connection with cavernous sinus. That is through dangerous area of face. If you recollect the face lecture, okay, the facial vein, through deep facial vein, pterygoid venous plexus, via this inferior ophthalmic vein, it is connected to cavernous sinus. Hence, any infection in the dangerous area of face, the infection will spread to cavernous sinus, leading to cavernous thrombosis. That is the clot of blood inside the cavernous sinus. That's how the question will be framed. Now each sinus, that each cavernous sinus has important communication with facial vein through superior ophthalmic vein. This is the route by which infection can travel from the facial skin to the cavernous sinus. Okay, now this is right cavernous and left cavernous sinus. These are the anterior and posterior intercavernous sinuses areas. These are the various partitions which are called as trabeculae. The partitions are very clearly seen in the cadavers than in the living body. The inside of this each cavernous sinus, you can find there is one artery, that is the internal carotid artery. You are finding many cranial nerves are also related to this cavernous sinus. Laterally, we are finding third, fourth, and sixth cranial nerves. What are those? Oculomotor, trochlear, and abducent. Then we are finding the maxillary division and the ophthalmic division of trigeminal, which is the fifth cranial nerve. Okay, now cavernous sinus thrombosis. So before I go to cavernous sinus thrombosis, cavernous sinus, this is one cavernous sinus, this is one more cavernous sinus. You can see it's a large venous space. In which cranial fossa it is situated? Middle cranial fossa on either side of the body of the sphenoid bone. So in the previous slides, we have seen it had so many partitions, which are nothing but caverns, like they are forming trabeculae, which are prominent in cadavers, dead. The floor and medial wall of this cavernous sinus is formed by endosteal dura mater. Lateral wall and roof is formed by meningeal layer of dura mater. The extensions are this cavernous sinus anteriorly, it is related to superior orbital fissure. Posteriorly, apex of the petrous part of the temporal bone. Length is 2 centimeters and width is 1 centimeter. Okay. Now, the relations of cavernous sinus are superiorly, it is related to optic chiasma, optic tract, olfactory tract, and internal carotid artery. Inferiorly, it is related to foramen lacerum. Then junction of the body and greater wing of sphenoid bone. Medially, it is related to hypophysis cerebri and sphenoidal air sinus. Laterally, temporal lobe with uncus. Uncus is the part of the brain, of the temporal lobe of the cerebrum. Below, laterally, it is related to mandibular nerve. Anteriorly, it is in communication with superior orbital fissure, apex of the orbit. Posteriorly, apex of the petrous part of the temporal bone, crus cerebri of midbrain. So this is anterior one, you are finding the superior orbital fissure. Posterior one, apex of the petrous part of the temporal bone. Laterally, it is related to oculomotor, trochlear, ophthalmic, maxillary divisions. Medially, it is related to hypophysis cerebri, that is the pituitary gland. This is the sphenoidal air sinus. Okay. And superiorly, it is related to optic nerve, optic tract, optic chiasma. Okay, few relations you can see. More medially, you can also see the internal carotid artery and abducent nerve. So this is the usual picture which we find in many textbooks, and I want everybody to practice this diagram for cavernous sinus as it's an essay question. Okay, and the tributaries, that means like it is receiving the venous drainage. Already I told you where. So from the orbit, superior ophthalmic vein, inferior ophthalmic vein, central vein of retina. From the brain, cavernous sinus receives venous blood via superior middle cerebral vein, inferior cerebral vein. Then you see from the meninges, we have sphenoparietal sinus, then frontal trunk of the middle, like meningeal vein, structures passing through lateral wall. Just now I have shown you in the form of picture also oculomotor, trochlear, ophthalmic, and maxillary. Medial wall is related to internal carotid artery and abducent nerve. Okay, so all these are things. So this is cavernous sinus. It is in communication with transverse sinus. This is our transverse sinus via superior petrosal sinus. This is a superior petrosal sinus. So if you remove this tentorium cerebelli, now you can see this cavernous sinus is also related to the internal jugular vein, to inferior petrosal sinus and plexus of veins around the internal carotid artery. Okay, with pterygoid venous plexus through emissory veins passing through foramen ovale, emissory sphenoidal foramen and foramen lacerum. With opposite cavernous sinus via anterior and posterior intercavernous sinuses. It is connected to facial vein via two routes. One is superior ophthalmic vein and angular vein. Then we have pterygoid venous plexus and deep facial vein. Okay, this picture helps us. These are incoming channels and these are the outgoing channels. You just practice this diagram because this is very, very important. Okay, communications are very important. Okay. Then cavernous sinus thrombosis. Septic thrombosis of cavernous sinus by communication from dangerous area phase or via orbit or via pharynx. You will see the infection may spread to dural venous sinus, that is the cavernous sinus. This picture helps us to know. Deep facial vein, pterygoid venous plexus, okay, the superior inferior ophthalmic vein, then it is getting connected to cavernous sinus. Hence, any infection in the dangerous area of the face or the orbit, you will see the infection will spread to cavernous sinus. The blood which is present in the cavernous sinus becomes clotted. You call it as thrombus. Thrombosis is the formation of blood clot. So septic is infection. Septic thrombosis of cavernous sinus is via communication from dangerous area of the face or via orbits or also via pharynx. So the patient will come to us with severe pain in the eye and also in the forehead. There may be ophthalmoplegia, that means paralysis of extraocular muscles due to the involvement of third, fourth and sixth cranial nerves. These nerves were related laterally to the cavernous sinus. There may be marked edema of the eyelids and you may see like the eyeball may be protruded outside, which is called as exophthalmos. So the clinical framing of question will be something like this. You have to identify the question that is being discussed. The topic under discussion is cavernous sinus. These hints will be given, which are seen in this slide. Okay. Pulsating exophthalmos, that is internal carotid artery is ruptured as a result of fracture of base of the skull and arteriovenous communication may be established. So if you just tie the internal carotid artery, it may be helpful, but patient may develop contralateral hemiplegia. Contralateral hemiplegia is paralysis of opposite half of the body. Okay. You can check one more slide which shows us cavernous sinus thrombosis. The causes are bacterial infection that has spread from the sinuses. The infection may also spread from the dangerous area of face involving teeth, ears, eyes, nose or skin of the face. So we see the clinical symptoms are bulging eyeball, usually on one side of the face, cannot move the eye in a particular direction, drooping eyelids, headache and vision loss. Okay. Generally, we undertake CT scan of the head, MRI, magnetic resonance imaging of the brain, magnetic resonance venogram, sinus X-ray, that means paranasal air sinuses are also checked. Then, then treatment is cavernous sinus thrombosis is treated with high dose antibiotics given through intravenous route. Sometimes surgery is needed to drain the infection. Okay. Now, apart from this, we also have petrosal sinus. Like superior and inferior petrosal sinuses are small sinuses situated on the superior and inferior borders of the petrous part of the temporal bone on each side of the skull. So this is the superior petrosal sinus and this is the inferior petrosal sinus. Okay, the superior sinus drains into the cavernous sinus, drains the cavernous sinus into the transverse sinus. Inferior petrosal sinus drains the cavernous sinus into internal jugular vein. Okay, now let us see the flow of blood. Inferior sagittal sinus, the blood is moving to straight sinus. From here, the blood is moving to the meeting point of sinuses, which is called as confluence of sinuses. From superior sagittal sinus, the blood moves to, again, confluence of sinuses. From confluence of sinuses, it moves to transverse sinus. From transverse sinus, the blood moves to sigmoid sinus. From sigmoid sinus to internal jugular vein. From internal jugular vein, it is brachiocephalic vein, finally into superior vena cava. The movement of venous blood from cavernous sinus, it is moving via superior petrosal sinus to transverse, then sigmoid, via inferior petrosal sinus to internal jugular vein. That's it. Thank you.